There's more federal incarcerations for drug offenses than there are for homicide, aggravated assault, kidnapping, robbery, weapons, immigration, arson, sex offenses, extortion, bribery, etc., combined. How did that happen?
I think there was a lot of fear. Level war on drugs, the crack epidemic, it became, I think, a bipartisan cause to get tough on crime.
The legislative landmines that are set up and that make you feel like it's impossible to get out. 13th Amendment. It make you feel like you're never gonna succeed because you don't deal with the 13th Amendment. We talking about the Second Amendment and getting the guns and all of that or whatever, right? But you're not dealing with the fact that the convicts and slavery, so forth and so on, and that continue to perpetuate. All right, so now you go like this. What I want you to know is, and just to be fair for the conversation, that the revolution that you're looking for first has to start by seeing what are the legislative landmines that we can begin to remove. So the generation coming behind me and my generation and some of our elders are getting jammed up in 13th Amendment. I'm gonna just keep on hitting you with that.
13th Amendment says no involuntary servitude except for those who have been duly convicted of a crime. So once you've been convicted of a crime, you are in essence a slave of the state.
Are in the planning stages, and this government has the intentions of throwing more and more people in prison.
All right, so I'm sure by now a lot of people seen the documentary 13th by Ava Duvernay. An amazing documentary. I would recommend everybody see it who didn't see it. She did an amazing job. I would give it 4.5 stars only because of the ending. Only because of the ending was weak. Like, it was one of the greatest documentaries with the worst endings ever. But the body of the documentary is phenomenal. Body of the documentary is phenomenal. Now, that's my shout out and salute and much love and praise for Ava for doing. She could have done anything else and she chose the 13th. So now for the rest of the people, let me get to the topic of the 13th. The reason why I say the ending was wrong, well, because you got to think about the proper beginning. This is what was missing from the beginning. And the reason why I wouldn't give it like 5 crowns. The reason why. Okay, now, the whole conversation about the 13th happens because of Abraham Lincoln, who was a lawyer. Abraham Lincoln is the one who touched this sacred document called the Constitution. The Constitution was already 100 years old. So when, say, Donald Trump, wants to change the Constitution, this would be considered sacrilegious. If this man touches that document. Now, Abraham Lincoln is touching a sacred document, and the 13th Amendment was already there. They just changed it, to this wording, and that I still call legislative landmine, political doublespeak, but it wasn't really doublespeak. It was just pretty blatant, just saying, if you're a criminal, we still consider you a slave, a captive, right? So, as a youth, people say, I would never be a slave, but captivity and slavery is really the same word, if you understand, So people weren't slaves, they grow up to be prisoners, right? And they're comfortable. It's become a lifestyle, the prison pipeline lifestyle, like just in and out of prison as if it's cool.
Is the criminal justice system in America racist?
On a day-to-day, day-in, day-out basis for most people in America, it's okay. Things have gotten a lot better. People are a little too sensitive to talk about stuff, and that's a drag, but that's the way it is. But on a bigger level, it's very depressing. This whole thing of this war on drugs and the mass incarcerations that have happened pretty much for the last 40 years has just decimated the black male population. It's slavery. It's just slavery through and through, and it's the same fear of the black male that existed back in the 1800s. having even directed a movie about slavery, and the scenes that we have in the slave town, the slave auction town, where they're moving back and forth. Well, that looks like standing on the top tier of a prison system and watching the things go down, and between the private prisons and the public prisons, and the way prisoners are traded back and forth, and literally all the reasons that they have for keeping this going are all the same reasons they had for keeping slavery going after the whole world had pretty much decided that it was immoral.
So now, with Abraham Lincoln touching the Constitution to put in this amendment, this 13th Amendment. Now, anybody who knows about what we're dealing with, the energy of the numbers that these guys use: 13, 17, 7, 11, 3, 33, so forth. Like, if you know the numbers and you know what you're up against and you know what you're dealing with, the numbers and the symbols that they usually use. So 13 is one of them. So when he touches this document, you got to look at it. It was the bank versus the bank. The Union was the bank, and the Feds and the Confederates was the bank. So the Confederates was crack you over the head. The Union was, we're going to outsmart them with legislation, with politics, Jim Crow, and all of these different things. So that was the fight. The fight was, how are we going to keep this free labor? How are we going to continue with oppression? Okay, so it's something where, although the Confederates lost, the Union won. There was still a lot of smart blacks that was around that exist. There was still a lot of smart blacks to know, this needs to come out of this document or whatever the case is. But the only thing that can prevent that conversation, they put a bullet in his head. All right? Well, some people say, well, it was because of this, it was because of that, it was because of the greenbacks, right? But bigger than the greenbacks was the fact that he touched the Constitution, put this in, and before people can focus on taking it out.
For those who have been duly convicted of a crime. So once you've been convicted of a crime, you are in essence a slave of the state.
The conversation became, they killed the president. So you ignore the fact that this 13th Amendment has been altered, and you focus on the fact that the president has been assassinated. So that became the talking point in the conversation. So 100 years go by, and the conversation of the 13th has been celebrated, right? Because since then, nobody really has made this an issue to remove this from the Constitution, to remove this legislative landmine. So now you go like this. Reparations was also issued by Abraham Lincoln. Reparations was also issued by Abraham Lincoln. So once he was assassinated, his vice president reversed or halted everything that was allotted to the people of the community. So now the 13th Amendment directly deals with reparations. The 13th Amendment, when you think 13th Amendment, and they say, okay, you're free, except if you're a criminal. So while you're free, we're going to reparate you. Okay? So those two tie together. So from there, you understand police brutality, oppression, all of those things tie in together. So when you see this documentary, 13th, and you see how the prison population was little by little, and it just grew and it was exploding, millions at a time, from every 10 years to every 5 years to off the charts, right? And you see how the numbers were moving. Now you got to realize, this is due to the 13th Amendment. The 13th Amendment, again, ties to reparations, freedom from oppression. So at the end of the this documentary, you see them say, instead of reparations, after all the oppression and all the heartache, they say, Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter. That's similar to the Civil Rights movement. That's similar to the I am a man, or am I not a man, or I am a man, like those are true, empty statements. Like the campaign should have never changed from reparations at no given time. When it went to civil rights went, you push for it. And Martin Luther King, who was the #1 advocate for civil rights, Martin Luther King pretty much felt comfortable that LBJ would continue on to get to the reparations conversation, but he never did. He fell short on that. Martin Luther King realized that he was he'd been slighted and been conned, but it was already too late. So he was put in a position where they put these empty catchphrases such as civil rights, I am a man, Black Lives Matter. Now they sound cool, they sound pretty catchy, and people get pretty emotional about them. But when you look at, what is the agenda of these movements that are made up and based and started or funded usually by the opposition. You got what I'm saying? George Soros funds or funded Black Lives Matter. This is information that's already available. So at the end of this documentary, when you're talking about prison and captivity and something that was started by Abraham Lincoln, and then you don't bring up reparations in the conversation as your ending statement, then it's like it's a big fail, But overall, I would check out the documentary. It's great work, great conversation, but that ending is extremely weak and just horrible. So I would just, anybody that I'm suggesting to check that out, your children need to check that out so they can understand what's going on, especially being that you have a Republican back in the White House that can exploit that language about a criminal and being hard on them, tough on crime, which means, again, is double speak for black people. So specifically for the black community, anytime you see artists or you see anybody who you feel is in a position where they can speak for us or whatever the case is, and anybody who's in that position and you don't know what to say, you got a loss for words, just say reparations. Just say reparations. End all be all. But anyway, check out the film. Check out the documentary on Netflix. It's pretty awesome. She didn't get the big posters, throughout the city, and she got the posters inside the subways, not the big ones out in the open where a lot of people could check it out. But still in all, I think the numbers obviously had to do well because a lot of people that I know seen it without me even bringing it up. But anyway, the point of it is reparations should have ended that documentary, just like reparations should have been the conversation that should have been had, and Black Lives Matter splintered that and wind up going that way to an endless empty catchphrase for lesbians and LGBT or whatever their agenda is, and because you could check it out yourself, but opposed to reparations. And there's plenty answers to reparations, there's plenty solutions to reparations, there's plenty people that done trillions of research in Cobra, Dr. Claude, so many people, so many movements and so many websites have so many answers, yet people say, well, how do we do reparations? How do we start? Now we're at a point where, okay, the conversation has survived. Subscribe, comment, let me know what you thought about her documentary, and do you agree? Should it ended with reparations?
Looks like a weapon out of a science fiction movie, but a new heat device could help get fighting inmates under control safely. It was demonstrated today at the LA County Prison and
Tensions ran so high, so personal, that at one point a lawmaker was beaten unconscious on the Senate floor. Eventually, war broke out. Brother against brother, North against South. At its heart, the question of slavery was never simply about civil rights. It was about the meaning of America.